There was no doubt that Gunsmoke would always be on during prime time on CBS. James Arness had the part of Matt Dillon.
It was more than just a TV show for 20 years.
It was the living room of America. Everyone in the family rushed to the couch every week to watch Marshal Matt Dillon ride through Dodge City.
And James Arness was the best at playing a hero. He always did the right thing and was calm. His fans didn't just watch his last scene as Dillon, though, they felt it.
There was nothing loud or showy about it.
It was quiet, strong, and full of feeling.
When you say goodbye to a hero, you only get that look. What ended the story, and why was that last moment so powerful? And did it really make people cry like fans say it did?
Come with us as we look more closely at Gunsmoke and find out what really happened after the end. What the cast thought and stories from behind the scenes that fans had never heard before.
What the American West was all about. It was more than just another TV show. The Western was the first movie that everyone else watched afterwards.
In the 1870s, the story took place in Dodge City, Kansas. At that time, the American West was still very wild and dangerous.
Marshal Matt Dillon was in the middle of everything. A brave and cool police officer who always did what was right. William Conrad played him on the radio. And James Arness brought the role to life on TV.
From 1952 to 1961, the radio show ran, and fans quickly fell in love with it.
Some people who study radio even said that Gunsmoke is often ranked as one of the best shows of all time and of any type.
That truly shows how unique it was from the start. When CBS first put the show on the radio, it didn't have any sponsors.
The network paid for it since they thought it was good. Their faith soon paid off. The show made the switch to TV in 1955 and was a huge hit. It started out as a half-hour show. Then, in 1961, it grew to an hour-long version. A clear sign that people just couldn't get enough. They didn't.
At that time, Gunsmoke was the longest-running scripted American television show, with 20 seasons and 635 episodes. Families have been gathered around the TV for years to watch Matt Dillon fight dangerous criminals, protect good people in town, and bring justice to the border.
It turned into more than just fun. It became a part of American life.
A writer for the Los Angeles Times once called it our own Iliad and Odyssey, comparing it to old stories about brave people.
People really felt that way about Gunsmoke.
But while the show was exciting and dramatic, Gunsmoke's real life was full of shocks and big changes as well.
Up with the times.
During its run, Gunsmoke didn't stay the same.
It turned into something bigger and different as TV did.
From 1955 to 1961, it was a black and white half-hour show at first.
As TV changed over time, Gunsmoke changed too.
It was cut down to an hour, which gave fans more time each week to enjoy life in Dodge City. After a while, the older half-hour shows were shown again, this time under the name Marshal Dillon. There are still a lot of fans who watch those old episodes because they remember how much they loved the show.
Different TV stations kept showing the show over and over because people still wanted to see it. New generations learned about Gunsmoke through networks like TV Land, MeTV, and others that kept it on air. The show was well known outside of the US. It was called Gun Law in the UK. That's how far it really reached. The legacy wasn't just the shows, though.
5 special TV movies were made with the cast coming back after the main show finished, giving fans one more chance to ride along with Matt Dillon. One thing that showed how well liked the show was in Hollywood was that it won 15 Primetime Emmy Awards.
Because Gunsmoke was so popular, you might think it would get a big send-off.
But the ending was so unexpected that no one saw it coming, not even the players.
A shocking finish that no one saw coming. Fans thought Gunsmoke would keep going for many more seasons after 20 years on TV. The actors felt the same way.
For them, the show was everything, and each week felt like a new part of a long, steady trip. But in 1975, the network did something that shocked everyone.
Gunsmoke was not picked up for a 21st season by CBS.
There was no warning, no goodbye, and no last show to say goodbye to characters that people loved.
As James Arness later said, "We didn't have a final wrap-up show.
The 20th year was over. We all thought it would go on for at least one more season."
The network didn't tell anyone they were going to cancel.
Instead of getting it from the studio, the cast and crew read about it in the news.
Imagine working on a show for 20 years and then hearing from the press that it was over.
It was a sudden end to a show that changed the history of TV.
But Marshal Dillon's story didn't end when the show did. Fans were able to move on after seeing the made-for-TV shows.
Especially the touching ending scenes that made people feel things. People still watch to see Matt Dillon walk those dusty streets and protect Dodge City in the way that only he could. That love that lasts sets the stage for one more important scene that pulled fans right back into Dillon's world and made them feel like they were going to say goodbye to an old friend.
But what was it about that last ride that made it so memorable? Why do people still talk about it now? That being said, let's look at some interesting behind-the-scenes information that not many people know. The surprise part that John Wayne was cast in.
Westerns were the big thing in Hollywood when Gunsmoke was being made. At that time, John Wayne was the most famous cowboy in the world. A lot of fans know that Wayne was first wanted to play Marshal Matt Dillon.
A lot of people don't know this, though. James Arness got the part with help from John Wayne.
He told James Arness that he had already worked with Wayne on a few movies before the offer came in.
Studios really wanted Wayne, but he turned them down because he didn't want to watch TV instead of movies. Instead of leaving, Wayne told the group about Arness.
"I have a young man here under contract who I think might fit the bill," he said.
That easy idea changed the history of TV. People all over the world knew Arness as Marshal Dillon.
John Wayne, on the other hand, kept making movies and was in favorites like The Searchers, The Longest Day, and True Grit.
It's almost funny to think about it. Gunsmoke would have looked very different if Wayne had taken the job.
She also might not have become the star that fans love today.
But Arness's trip wasn't easy either.
He wasn't sure if he should join at first. The job that is hardest to fill, it wasn't easy to find the right person to play Matt Dillon, believe it or not. There was a lot of competition for the part in Hollywood. On the radio show, William Conrad played Dillon, and he wanted to get the TV part too.
But directors didn't think he looked good enough for TV, even though he had a good voice.
Ray Burr, who later became known as Harry Mason, was another actor who tried out.
But the director wasn't happy.
He joked that his chair stood up with him when he did. This means that Burr looked too big for the part. It was becoming a long and tiring search to cast.
Things changed quickly when John Wayne brought up James Arness. Still, Arness almost didn't take the part.
In an interview in 2002, he said that someone had told him that becoming a TV star could hurt his movie business. A director told him that if he got stuck in a TV show like A Western Thing, which ran for 2 seasons and then ended, he should try something else. In the movies, you'll get into a lot of trouble.
It was a scary thought.
Arness was still young and just starting to make a name for himself in movies, but he listened to his gut and took the part anyway. That choice changed history. While Arness took on the lead part, a very different person was cast for another major role on the show.
The part of Miss Kitty that almost went somewhere else.
Amanda Blake became well known for her role as Miss Kitty Russell, the tough but charming bar owner on Gunsmoke. She wasn't the first choice, though. Aside from Blake, actress Polly Bond was also offered the job. Now comes the shocking part. She said no because she thought the pay was too high. That may sound strange now, but back then, people thought that men should make more money than wives. Tom Bond, Polly Bond's husband, played Butch in The Little Rascals and was also an actress. She turned down the job because the thought of making more money than her husband made her feel bad. Her work didn't go very far, which was sad. Amanda Blake took the part instead, and this made her one of the most well-known TV faces. At the same time, Miss Kitty became one of the most famous figures in Western history. There are times when this kind of decision can change a life, and sometimes it can even change TV history. When we talk about how things can change, some players went into the Gunsmoke studio as unknowns and left as stars.
But who were they?
Well-known people before they were stars. Gunsmoke had a lot of guest stars because it ran for 20 years and had more than 600 episodes.
That meant that a lot of people went through Dodge City.
Many of them went on to become big stars. In a 1973 episode, Richard Dreyfuss played a young man who was dealing with disaster. This was a long time before he became famous for movies like Jaws.
Early in his career, Sam Elliott became known for his deep voice and cowboy parts.
He also appeared on the show in the 1970s.
Little Jodie Foster was in 3 episodes when she was a kid.
Then there's Harrison Ford, who is one of the most famous actors in movie history. He was in 2 Gunsmoke episodes in 1972 and 1973, a long time before Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Ron Howard, Kurt Russell, Dennis Hopper, Nick Nolte, and Adam West, who would become stars later on, also showed up. It doesn't stop there, though. In Dodge City, a lot of people from Star Trek were also seen. William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, James Doohan, and DeForest Kelley were all on Gunsmoke. They were all actors who were in the first Star Trek. And the list goes on, with stars from Star Trek, Deep Space Nine among them. Behind the camera, the link could be seen too. Jerry Goldsmith worked on 2 episodes of Gunsmoke. He later wrote the famous Star Trek theme music. It is easy to see why Gunsmoke became such an important part of TV history. It was home to so many famous people. But even though stars came and went, the fans were always there. They were more important than you might think. It was letters from fans that made a difference. Gunsmoke fans stuck with it. They were heard, and it mattered. In the 1950s and 1960s, viewers rarely had the power to change a show. Now, fan campaigns are popular. Still, Gunsmoke fans did that. When Milburn Stone played Doc Adams, he got letters from real doctors telling him that some of his lines about medicine didn't make sense. He didn't just ignore it, he started looking into it to make sure his character sounded real. Amanda Blake's life was also changed a lot by her fans. It was hard for her to find work after she left the show. She read a letter from a young girl who said she prayed for Miss Kitty one day, though. Afterward, Blake said, "It was so moving and touching that it gave me new strength to keep going." Those easy words from a child made her feel better. At that level, Gunsmoke made a strong bond with its viewers. It's clear why the show was so famous for a long time. What you might not know is that not all Gunsmoke characters were written exactly the way they looked on screen. How Chester was made by Dennis Weaver. One great example is Chester Good, played by Dennis Weaver. Weaver thought of the part as a serious one when he first tried out for it, but directors told him right away that it was meant to be funny. Weaver said that at first he didn't get it. After a while, he thought of a student from college who always made people laugh and had a thick accent. Weaver said, "I used to imitate him at parties." That's when the memory came back to him. He said, "I think I get what you mean," and asked for another chance. "Could you give me another chance?" That one-of-a-kind voice helped him try again, and Chester was born. Weaver didn't stop there, though. He even thought of Chester's famous limp. But it caused a problem he didn't expect. It made the character stand out. Fans started writing letters, afraid that Weaver was really hurt. They were sure that his leg was hurting him. As time went on, Weaver said he felt bad about the limp because it made people think he was hurt in real life. Weaver wasn't the only one on the show who walked funny. One of them, though, came from a very real place, James Arness and his wounds from the war. Chester's limp was part of the act, but James Arness had a different story. His bad walking was caused by real injuries he got in World War II. When Arness got home from the war, he was still in pain, which made it hard for him to work on Gunsmoke. The Marshal had to walk or stand for long amounts of time in many scenes, which was hard for him. Reports say that the crew had to carefully plan how to shoot. A lot of the scenes that needed Arness to walk around a lot were shot early in the day. When she was stronger, he was also given time to rest between shots. As the show went on for 20 seasons and Arness aged, the task got harder. At times, it was hard to even get on a horse. But he kept going even though it hurt and took a long time. One reason people loved him was how dedicated he was. He got really tough for the part. Even though Arness was having physical problems, the show was changing society in ways that no one saw coming. For example, it gave the world a very famous phrase. A lot of the time, lines from TV shows just become part of daily life. "Get out of Dodge" is one of the most famous Western sayings, and Gunsmoke helped make it famous. Folks say it these days when they need to quickly leave a dangerous or messy place. That's what made it fun, even though it sounds strange. People used the phrase before the show, but Gunsmoke made it popular all over the world. The saying stuck because millions of people watched the police in Dodge City keep order. It was fun to use, especially when playing with friends. Fans turned it into a catchy way to say, "Let's get out of here," even though it may have been used to tell troublemakers to stay away at first. That's not the only interesting thing Gunsmoke led to, though. Also, the show went to comic books, which was a surprise.
From TVs to comic books. In the past, TV shows were rarely turned into comic books. This was before big movie worlds and superhero crossovers. But Gunsmoke was so well liked that it made the jump. It was first part of one of Dell Comics' stories, but soon it got its own title. After 4 years, fans could not only watch TV shows but also read books about Marshal Dillon's experiences. The show was a hit in more than one country. The United Kingdom even got its own. There, the story was told in the form of a cartoon strip called Gun Law. That picture was in newspapers every day, and it was printed longer than the US. People really cared about Gunsmoke in that story, even though it wasn't the flashy superhero stories we see now. But the show's impact on comic book fans wasn't the most surprising thing. You won't believe it, but Gunsmoke had a direct effect on Gilligan's Island, which is one of the most popular TV shows of all time. As Gunsmoke held on to its spot. During Gunsmoke's long run, another show was becoming more sought after. Gilligan's Island was fun, silly, and very different from Dodge City, which was set in the West. It became a hit right away. It was even getting better reviews than Gunsmoke. But then there was trouble behind the scenes. Dawn Wells, who plays Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, says that the network had originally planned to cancel Gunsmoke instead of her show. The time slot was supposed to go to Gilligan's Island, but a strong voice changed everything. When the wife of the head of the CBS board came back from vacation, she heard that Gunsmoke had been cancelled, but it hadn't been. Happy. She told the network that Gunsmoke could not be cancelled. I love that show. That was it. Gilmore Girls was dropped after 3 seasons, but Gunsmoke was kept on the air. Everyone concerned felt sad at that moment. You could be on a show that's doing well and then lose your spot because another show had strong fans behind the scenes. It proves how strong loyalty is. Both on and off the screen. Gunsmoke was loved by both fans and important people. Because of that, the show ran for 20 seasons, giving us all the stories and moments we still love today. Milburn Stone almost turned around and left. A lot of people really liked Doc Adams on Gunsmoke, but the part almost never came together. It was Milburn Stone who was first offered the part, and he didn't want to say yes right away. Why? He kept a grudge against Charles Marquis Warren for a long time. Warren helped make the show and did work as a writer, producer, and director. Stone once said, "There's no stage big enough to hold Charles Marcus Warren and me." This made his point very clear. He told them about a project they had worked on together in Texas before, and it had gone badly. He said they were really angry with each other. Stone fought back hard when the Gunsmoke team asked him to try out for the part of Doc Adams. He said at first, no way. It wasn't going to be easy for the studio, though. They talked him into going on the show. Stone did not only want a part, though. To be fair, he wanted. He saw stars from old shows on reruns in Hollywood, but their families had nothing. He said, "Look at my dead friends working on TV every night while their families go hungry." This made it very important to him. He didn't give in and asked for lifetime residuals. It worked out in the end, and Milburn Stone got the part. That choice changed the history of TV. But taking the job was only the beginning. When he got to Dodge City, there was another storm waiting for him. When Doc didn't like the policeman. Stone and Arness became famous on screen together, but Stone didn't like Arness at first. His words were true, "I hated Jim for the first 3 years." At the start of the show, Stone didn't like how Arness did her job. He said that Arness was always late and sometimes didn't show up at all. When he did, he would act silly instead of really being there. For Stone, this was not at all business. He told Arness that they were totally opposed, which means that their ways of working are completely different. He even said he didn't think Arness should be in the game. Stone finally broke. He told Arness one day, "Guy, if you ever show up late again, you'll have 2 things to explain. Not only where you were, but where I went." It was a bold line, especially to say to the show's star. But instead of fighting back or getting angry, Arness surprised him. After Stone finished, Arness looked him right in the eye and said, "You're absolutely right." That moment changed everything. Stone later shared that after that talk, he began to love that guy. He called Arness a great, big, wonderful cub bear. Soon, the 2 men worked together in harmony, proving that sometimes tough conversations build real respect. Their bond helped strengthen the show,
and audiences had no idea such strong drama was happening behind the cameras. And while the cast resolved their differences, a very different kind of storm was brewing on TV screens across America.
The Western that wouldn't quit. Gunsmoke wasn't just a Western show. It ruled television. Long before modern Westerns like Yellowstone or Justified, this series set the standard. It lasted 20 years, and many people consider it the greatest Western series ever made. It introduced young actors who later became legends like Burt Reynolds, Kurt Russell, Jodie Foster, Harrison Ford, and more. Even decades after it was cancelled, Gunsmoke climbed back into the top 10 streaming shows in the US, proving that its legacy never faded. But what many fans still talk about is how the show ended, or rather, how it didn't end. In 1975, Westerns weren't as popular anymore. Crime shows and detective dramas were taking over network television. Ratings for Gunsmoke began slipping, especially after Burt Reynolds left the cast in 1965.
Instead of giving the show a planned wrap-up or letting it slowly finish, CBS suddenly cancelled it.
No warning, no build-up, no farewell. Even the cast didn't know.
James Arness and Milburn Stone, who had been there from the very first episode, didn't get a final goodbye scene. Fans were stunned.
And many felt the ending didn't honor what the show had meant to American television.
The final episode, The Sharecroppers, didn't even focus on Marshal Dillon or Doc Adams. Instead, it followed Festus Hagen in a light story that almost felt like a side tale. For a show that introduced the world to the hard, dusty life of the Old West, the ending felt soft, and many called it disrespectful
to the characters who shaped the series.
But even though the final episode fell short, the spirit of Gunsmoke was too strong to fade quietly. And years later, something big happened to fix that. A farewell that took nearly 2 decades. For many years after Gunsmoke went off the air, fans waited, hoping for a real ending. They loved the characters too much to accept such a sudden goodbye. And almost 19 years later, they finally got what they wished for. A special TV movie was made, a true finale that gave Marshal Dillon and the world of Gunsmoke the closure it deserved. It wasn't just another Western movie, it was a chance to say goodbye the right way. The show that had defined a generation finally received the honor it had earned. Fans who grew up watching Gunsmoke could finally feel like the story they loved had a proper ending. And for younger viewers discovering it later, it became clear why this show still stands tall as one of the greatest Western series ever made. But while the ending finally came, the real story lies in the journey, the cast battles, the near-miss careers, and the forgotten emotions behind the scenes.
And at the heart of it all was one towering figure. James Arness, who carried the badge longer than any TV marshal in history.
Now, the big question remains.
How did his very last scene truly play out? And what made it so unforgettable? When Gunsmoke ended in 1975, fans were left without a real goodbye.
The final TV episode did not give Marshal Matt Dillon the honor he deserved. But the story did not stay unfinished forever. Years later, Gunsmoke returned, not as a full show, but through 5 TV movies in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And the last one, Gunsmoke, One Man's Justice, finally gave James Arness the ending fans had been waiting for. This movie treated Dillon the way he always deserved, as a wise older lawman who had seen life, learned from it, and still stood strong. In the story, Dillon tries to help a young boy avoid the same mistakes he once made. It shows a softer side of him, but also a deeper strength. Then comes the scene fans never forgot. At the climax, it looks like the villain, Josh Reardon, might escape justice. The young men around Dillon freeze up in fear, but Dillon doesn't. With steady hands and calm courage, he raises his gun, one shot, one hit, and then the line that wrapped up 20 years of TV history, "I got him." Simple words, but powerful. It was the kind of ending the original series never gave him.
Strong, quiet, and full of dignity. Sadly, Milburn Stone, Doc Adams, wasn't there for this final moment.
He had passed away 14 years before the movie. But even without him, James Arness carried the spirit of Gunsmoke one last time. And after nearly 2 decades of waiting, the West finally had its goodbye.
But the impact of Gunsmoke didn't end there.
Because even after the dust settled in Dodge City, the show continued to shape the entire Western world.
A legacy that shaped Westerns forever.
Even today, Gunsmoke stands as one of the most important Western shows ever made, and its influence stretches far beyond its final episode. In December 2024, the show hit a new streaming platform and immediately climbed into the top 10 most watched lists in the United States.
That doesn't happen unless a story truly lasts. And Gunsmoke didn't just entertain viewers, it helped build careers and change Hollywood.
Without it, Clint Eastwood's path might have looked very different. His series, Rawhide, which helped launch him into superstardom, was created by one of Gunsmoke's early producers.
And Kurt Russell's famous role in the movie Tombstone? That line back to Gunsmoke is clear too.
Russell first acted on the show when he was only 13, long before he became a Western icon. From classic Western movies to new school series like those created by Taylor Sheridan and even the spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone, the DNA of Gunsmoke is everywhere. Many say the modern Western world owes a debt to Marshal Dillon and the streets of Dodge City. As one fan put it, it's impossible to measure just how far Gunsmoke's influence reaches. And even after decades of television changes, streaming wars, and new genres, audiences are still writing back to Dodge, proving that some legends never fade.
Do you think James Arness's final scene gave the show the farewell it deserved? Or would you have wanted a different ending? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories
from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.